Hello and welcome you all. I am Mr. Sasne and today we are going to continue with our third chapter, that is steam and steam boilers from the subject thermal engineering. We have already started with this third chapter and today this is our fourth lecture on this third chapter. So we have started with the steam part and in the previous lecture we have seen what is the Molière diagram. Then again we have seen how to use the steam table. So we have seen the two types of steam table, that is pressure based steam table and the temperature based steam table, and I hope that you have gone through that third lecture. So today we will continue with the further points from this chapter, and today we will see what is the Rankine cycle, and then we will continue with the second half part of this chapter, that is the introductory part related to steam boilers. So now first we will see what is the Rankine cycle. The Rankine cycle is an ideal cycle for comparing the performance of steam power plant. So we are having a diagram regarding the steam power plant. So first we will understand what are the basic elements of the steam power plant and what is the function of each and every element. Basically the steam power plant consists of four elements, which are nothing but boiler, steam turbine, condenser and the feed pump. So first we will see or we will start with the boiler. In simple words, boiler is nothing but a container where water is stored and this same water is converted into steam. So this boiler, the working fluid, that is nothing but water, it will receive the heat by the combustion of fuel, and thus the water will be converted into steam, and later on we can see in this diagram the steam is then provided to the further component, that is the steam turbine. So the second component, that is steam turbine, the steam which is produced in the boiler is fed to this turbine, and the boiler pressure is thus expanded, or we can say that the turbine is a device which will utilize this steam and convert it into output work. So we will be obtaining some output work from this turbine, and it is indicated by WT in the diagram. After steam turbine, whatever the output of this turbine, it is provided to the condenser. Thus in the condenser, the exhaust steam from the turbine, it will give away the heat to the cooling water, and it will completely condensed into water. So in case of condenser, we are just circulating the cold water, and with the help of this cold water we are trying to cool the exhaust of this turbine, so that the condensate, that is the output of the turbine, it is completely converted into water. So after condenser, the next and last element is nothing but the feed pump. Whatever the output of the condenser is obtained, it will be provided to the feed pump, and thus the feed pump will transfer this condensate from the hot well to the boiler at the boiler pressure. So in this way this cycle is completed, or we can say that the working of this steam power plant is usually a closed loop system, because we are generating the steam in case of boiler, and after circulating through these all these elements, that is turbine, condenser and feed pump, the water is again provided or returned back to the boiler. So this is the working of steam power plant, and we are going to now see what is the PV and TS diagram in case of Rankine cycle. So we will just have a look that how these four process will be represented on PV and TS diagram in the next slide. As we have now seen all the four elements of the steam power plant, now we will study how to represent the various process occurring in those four elements on PV and TS diagram. So here we are having in the first diagram, that is the PV diagram, and the second diagram is TS diagram. We will also refer to the previous steam power plant diagram so that we can understood easily how to draw the PV and TS diagram. So basically this Rankine cycle, or in case of PV and TS diagram, we can consider a total of 5 process, and we will start with our first process, that is we will be starting with the steam turbine. So on the right hand side we can see that just prior to the turbine there is a number denoted by 1, and after this turbine another number we can see, that is 2. So this process 1 to 2, it will be occurring in case of turbine. So in case of PV and TS diagram, we can just refer to these same numbers, that is if we consider the line 1 to 2, then it represents the isotropic expansion of steam where or which takes place in case of turbine. And thus in case of turbine there is a expansion process occurring. We can observe that the steam pressure will be having a great drop. So this was about the first process which occurs in turbine. Now the second process, that is process 2 to 3. So again, if we refer to the diagram of the steam power plant, then we can see that these numbers 2 to 3, in between these numbers we are having the element which is called as condenser. So again, in case of PVTS diagram, if we look at the process or the line represented by 2 to 3, then this process is called as a constant pressure process. During the first process, that is in case of turbine, since there was expansion, the pressure has dropped from P1 to P2, and in this second process, that is process 2 to 3, the pressure will be constant, that is P2, as well as the temperature T2 is also constant, and the exhaust steam is condensed in the condenser, giving out the latent heat to the cooling water. So after this condenser process, the next process is indicated by 3 to 4, and again in the steam power plant diagram we can see that 3 to 4, in between this we are having the feed pump, and the main function of feed pump is to increase the pressure or to transfer the condensate from condenser back to the boiler. So in case of this process, definitely there will be an increase in pressure. Thus the water from hot well, which is at low pressure, that is P2, it is pumped isentropically into the boiler at high pressure P1. Now the next process, it is indicated by line 4 to 5. As the water enters the boiler, it is first heated up to the saturation temperature or evaporation temperature T1, and during this process the state point moves along the curve 4 to 5, called as sensible heating. In this way we are again back at pressure P1 and temperature T1. So after this we are again now at boiler, and from boiler, once the steam is generated, it will be provided to the turbine where the expansion process will take place. So this process 5 to 1, it will be taking place in case of boiler, where the water will be completely converted into steam. So now there is one more important point that we can see in case of PV and TS diagram, that there are three different lines representing the turbine process. That is, we can see process 1 to 2, as well as 1 dash 2 dash, and again 1 double dash 2 double dash. So these three lines are generally denoting what kind of steam is provided to the turbine. So if we are having wet steam, then it is represented by 1 dash 2 dash. If we are having dry saturated steam, then it is represented by 1 to 2. Whereas if we are having superheated steam which is provided to the turbine, then that is represented by 1 double dash 2 double dash. So depending on what kind of steam is generated in the boiler, or what kind of steam we are providing to the turbine, depending on that type, we are going to represent the process 1 to 2. So this was all about the different process which are associated with, or in case of Rankine cycle, and also the formula to determine the efficiency of Rankine cycle is given here. So efficiency, as we know, that it is nothing but the ratio of output to input. So we can calculate the efficiency as follows. That is W net, which will be obtained from the turbine, and the input will be nothing but the heat which is provided by the combustion of fuel in case of boiler. So this is indicated by QA. And if we are taking the ratio, so we can calculate this with the help of enthalpy values. So in case of turbine, as we have represented those process by 1 to 2, we can calculate the enthalpy, that is the values of H1 and H2. And also there is one more element which is going to consume certain amount of power that is produced by this turbine, and this element is nothing but pump. So the function of pump, as we have already seen, it will be transferring the condensate from condenser back to the boiler, and for performing this function it will consume certain amount of energy. So it is also necessary to take into consideration regarding this energy consumed by the pump. So we are going to subtract this from the turbine work, and we will be having the ratio, that is this total or net work to the heat added to the boiler. So again, in case of boiler, whatever the heat is provided, we can determine this value by calculating the enthalpy values, that is H1 minus HF4. So with this we can calculate the efficiency of Rankine cycle. So with this we have completed almost all the points related with steam part from this third chapter, and from now onwards we will be having a detailed study regarding the steam boilers. So today we will just see the introductory part related to what is a steam boiler and what are the classification of steam boilers. So let's see those introductory part in the further slides. Steam generators or steam boilers. So these are the first and most important part or element of steam power plant, as we know that steam is used for power generation as well as for various applications such as process heating or for other industrial process. So to produce the steam at required pressure as well as at the desired temperature, boiler is used. So boilers are also known as steam generators. It is usually a closed vessel made of high quality steel in which steam is generated from water by the application of heat, either by the combustion of fuel such as oil or wood. The water receives the heat from the hot gases through the heating surface of the boiler, and thus the steam is generated, and it is collected over the water surface. Thus, in simple words, we can define the steam boiler as follows: that is, the equipment used for producing and transferring steam is called as steam generator or steam boiler. We are also having the principle of steam boiler. The fluid, which is nothing but water, which is contained in the boiler, and the thermal energy, which is released during the combustion of fuel, which may be solid, liquid, or gases, is transferred to this fluid, and it will convert the water into steam at the desired temperature and pressure. So this is what the simple principle which we have already discussed. Now we are going to see what is the classification of the steam boilers. So there are several ways of classifying the boilers. We are going to see all those one by one. So the boilers are classified as follows. So first point is a relative position of hot gases and water. So according to this, we can classify the boiler as a fire tube boiler and a water tube boiler. So if we talk about the fire tube boiler, then in this case the hot gases, and those will be passing through the tubes, and the water will be surrounding to these tubes. Whereas if we talk about the water tube boiler, then inside these tubes water will be passing, whereas the hot gases will be surrounding or to the exterior of these tubes. So you can just remember this simply as follows, that you should just see that what is the content inside the tube. So if we are having the water inside the tube, then we can say that it is a water tube boiler. And on the other hand, if the inside the tubes we are having hot gases, then we usually call it as fire tube boiler. So this is shown in this diagram. So in the first diagram, that is water tube boiler, you can see that whatever the tubes we are observing, those are represented by blue color, which is nothing but the water. And outside, or if we look at the other part outside the tube, then it is represented by orange color, which is nothing but the representation of hot gases. Whereas on the other diagram, that is in case of fire tube boiler, we can see that the content, or inside the tubes, we have represented it by orange color, which is the indication of hot gases. And the surrounding area of these tubes, it is represented by blue color, which is the indication of the presence of water. So this was regarding the first classification based on a relative position of hot gases and water. Now we'll see the next classification, that is according to method of firing. So again we are having here two types, that is the internally fired boilers and externally fired boilers. So the furnace, in case of internally fired boiler, the furnace is provided inside the boiler shell and is completely surrounded by water cooled surfaces. Whereas in case of externally fired boilers, the furnace is provided outside or under the boiler, and it has an advantage that its furnace is simple to construct and can be easily enlarged as and when required. So you can again understand this with the help of diagram. So in case of internally fired boiler, we are having a compact structure, whereas in case of externally fired boilers, we are having a separate chamber for producing this heat. Then we'll see the next classification, that is the third type. So according to pressure of steam, there will be high pressure boilers. So the boilers which are producing the steam above 80 bar, those are called as high pressure boilers. Whereas the low pressure boilers, those will be generating the pressure below 80 bar. So we will be calling that as low pressure boilers. Again, the next classification is based on method of circulation of water. So first is natural circulation method, and the other one is forced circulation method. In case of natural circulation, the circulation is set up by convection current or by gravity, whereas in case of forced circulation method, the circulation is with the help of high pressure pumps. So we are going to see both the types when we are going to study in detail regarding the various types of steam boiler. So there we will be having what is the natural circulation method, as well as we are also going to study regarding the forced circulation method, how it takes in case of boiler. The next classification is according to the nature of service to be performed, and that we are having the land boilers, portable boilers, and the mobile boilers. So the land boilers are the boilers which are used with the stationary plants. Then again, the portable boilers are the boilers which can be readily dismantled and easily carried out from one side to the other, whereas the mobile boilers are the boilers which are fitted on the mobile carriages. For example, the best example we are having here, that is if you consider the marine applications where the boilers are used, we call them as the mobile boilers. Again, the next classification is once through boiler. So these are the boilers where no circulation of water take place, that is the feed water leaves the tube as steam. On the other hand, we can consider another type of boilers where we will be having multiple number of tubes, and the water which is present in these tubes, those are circulated, and then it is converted into steam and then provided for the further application. So this was regarding the once through boiler or the multi-tube boilers. And the last classification of steam boiler is according to the nature of draught. So in this we are having again two types, which is a natural draught and artificial draught. So when the fuel burns in the furnace of the boiler with the circulation of air, then the draught is called as a natural draught, whereas if the air is forced by means of forced fan, then the draught is called as artificial draught. So we are going to study again in detail regarding what is the natural draught boiler or what is the artificial draught boiler in our further lectures. So we will not discuss in detail regarding this type right now. So this was all regarding the classification of boilers, and now we will stop here today. And in the next lecture we will first see in detail what are the various types of steam boiler. So till then, thank you very much.